3 sessions left after, well, no, with concluding tonight, 3 sessions left. So I offered you guys an opportunity to give us some direction on the last couple of classes. And I don't know, John, should I mention that you gave me some? So John and I were talking after class last week, and he actually threw out a couple of ideas that intersected nicely with at least one other thing that I wanted to do. So either I'm going to hijack John's idea and not do anything he wanted me to do, or I'm going to beautifully blend our ideas. We'll let you give a ruling when we get done, as if we accomplish that. So we've talked a lot about how we talk to people, make fewer statements, ask more questions. All of that is predicated on the fact that we will, one, have people that, two, we can talk to about spiritual things. And in discussing that with John, we really are surfacing, I think, what is for some, if not a lot of disciples, the precise point of the rub. I don't talk to many Christians who say, I just don't have any interest in the lost people. Just not concerned with teaching the lost. Don't want to do that. What I hear is just the opposite. I would like to do that, but I just can't find anybody to teach, or it just doesn't ever seem to come up in the conversation. And so really there are 2 struggles underneath that are really worth talking about. We could probably do a year of classes on evangelism and just talk about all the different this. I think these are 2 worth giving our time to. We'll see how much we can cover tonight. Maybe we'll extend it over into next Wednesday as well. But this first issue is where am I going to find people? And it's not a problem with knowing lost people. Do any of y'all know lost people? Okay. Do you know more lost people or saved people? Yeah, this is a Matthew 9:37 issue, isn't it? The harvest is, but the workers are, yeah, there are a whole lot more of them than there are of us. So it isn't the problem that we don't know lost people, but that when I wander out into my circle and I encounter those people, who is going to be open to having a conversation, even just a conversation about spiritual things? And then how do I figure that out, which is sort of the second piece of this, and that is where do you begin? How do you actually start a conversation about spiritual things beyond something like, have you ever considered the possibility you're going to go to hell? Well, you'd have their attention at that point, but I'm not sure that's the most effective way to begin talking to someone about their soul. So I think all of us have people in our lives that need the gospel, and they're people that we talk to. We just don't talk to them about the right stuff. We talk to them about Verlander's last outing and how amazing it was, or about the second inning against Boston yesterday, right? Did anyone talk about that? Man, I hope Bill Sanchez watches this class sometime, because yes, I just called out your Red Sox. Anyway, but how does that segue nicely into you need Jesus? Verlander, Jesus, that's a big long gap, and I'm not sure how you bridge those 2 things. Yes, ma'am.
I want to interject on where you are right now in the conversation, because my sister and I are doing a class along with my brother on every Thursday night, and she is in the body of Christ, but my brother is not. And her statement, her push, as well as mine, is to have our brother be saved. But in that, we keep making a statement to my brother that there's only one of 2 choices you have in the world. Either you're going to heaven or you're not. And that doesn't sit well with my brother, because he's not ready to be saved. He's not ready to give up what he's doing. He's already said that. But in that statement, it seems to be pushing him further and further away from wanting to be saved, even if I know I'm doing wrong, which he does. I'm living in sin, which he is. So that's kind of like
Well,
a hard divide in bringing him to make, no, let me back up. For us to ask him questions or put it on his plate to ask questions. To him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and two things about that. Obviously, you guys are already in the middle of it
Yeah.
with him. You're already there. And so there's no point in go back and saying, could we have gotten there in a different way? Because that's where you are. The second thing that I want to say is, we tried to talk about strategies that work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let me be real with you for a moment. No matter how good your strategy is, it will not always work because
Yeah, they're not ready. Well, I think that's a
people reject the gospel. Let me state it plainly. Lots of people reject the gospel. We celebrate the 3,000 in Acts 2, but forget that that was a minuscule number of the Jews that were in Jerusalem on that occasion, right? So sometimes it doesn't matter what your strategy. I want to do this the best I can, but even when I do,
And that's what he keeps doing.
there will be some people that will not respond. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think it also depends on who it is that's doing the talking. I've got a good friend that is very much in your face, and he baptizes more people than anybody I know.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that, and actually, if he had done that to me before I was a Christian, I probably wouldn't be a Christian today. But he's highly successful with it, so.
Yeah, don't ask me to explain the outliers. We had an elder at Dallard Road. His name was Wesley. I think maybe you've heard Anthony mention his name. Wesley converted probably half the people in that church. Okay, I mean, he baptized more people every year than 90% of churches. Not an exaggeration, all over the country. I mean, just dozens every year. And I got to tell you, he didn't do anything right. I mean, nothing. I watched this guy operate, and I would be mortified. He would go to the doctor's office, and there would be some receptionist there he'd talk to, and he'd kind of turn his face away from her. And she's like, "Oh, Mr. Wesley, no, don't be mad at me. Don't be mad at me." He said, "No, I invited you. You promised me you'd come. You didn't even come. I'm not even talking to you." And man, she would just, "Oh, come on. And then he'd get people in, and he would study with them, and he would listen. He wouldn't let them leave. He'd keep them in there for 3 or 4 hours. And I've told people, be sensitive to folks' time. Not Wesley. He baptizes all these people. Okay. So my point is, there are always outliers. And let me add as well that over time, you and I will have to figure out how we do what we do in a way that works for us. I think at the end of the day, the goal is, am I reaching people in my circle, which I think is going to some degree be fine-tuned and nuanced for us and the people that are around us. Okay? Did someone else have a hand? Want in on that? Yeah, Paul.
If he's so successful, why is he wrong?
Oh, I'm being facetious. He's not wrong.
No, I know, but if you find successful people like you're talking about, like he's talking about, why don't we realize that that's possible? I think I'm afraid of rejection.
Yes.
The person that made me realize that was, he just said, when I'm on an airplane, he's the one that's sitting beside you. And let me tell you about the most important thing in my life. We're going to be sitting here for an hour. It'll just take me 40 minutes. You may know what I'm talking about. It just goes and goes. And that way, you don't have the guilt that I can feel. You can say, well, I'll never be the one that talks to that person. Because I don't want to be the uncool person in the airplane. I don't want to be the person that acts like I'm offended when your friend's probably not offended. Maybe he really is, and that's how he lives life. Or this person that talks to the waitress. We meet a lot of people in our lives that we ignore. I know I do. I asked the guy we played golf for 18 holes. On the last hole, I got the courage to ask him if he would have a Bible class. And he didn't even get mad. He stopped and talked. He told us about how he was raised in a spiritual environment. And he said, thanks for asking. And I've never seen him again. At least I asked him.
Yep, that's exactly right.
We just asked people.
So let me agree that I think we need to be more courageous and out there. And let me add as a caveat, I don't know that I can replicate what Wesley does. I'm not saying I can't do some things he does, and I certainly think I ought to imitate his courage, but I'm not Wesley. Wesley can do and say things that I can't do, and I wish I knew the mystery to that. I wish that I could say the kind of things he says. Somebody would hit me, and I really don't know why they don't hit him, but they don't. So can I say to you again that we're each going to have to find our style, though examples of guys like this nudge us to be more courageous in executing that. So let me make two big broad observations about these issues of finding people. First of all, take some consolation that everybody struggles with this. Everyone struggles. In fact, if you go back to Colossians 4, as I was pondering all this after John and I talked, I thought about Colossians 4 and the prayer of Paul. This precedes the section we've worked pretty heavily after this, but he started in verse 2 by saying, devote yourself to prayer, keeping alert in it with an attitude of thanksgiving, praying at the same time for us as well, that God will open up to us a door for the word, so that we may speak forth the mystery of Christ, for which I have also been imprisoned, that I may make it clear in the way that I ought to speak. And so actually, Paul stirs my curiosity here. I'm wondering, what is the struggle that the prayer was designed to address? And how much does it look like ours? Because I think fundamentally, we want the same thing. We want doors, right? Opportunities to be able to talk to people, and when they come, to say the right things. And at some level, Paul is interested in the same thing. Maybe we could even fairly say he's struggling with the same thing. He's asking for prayers that he would have open doors to speak the word. So I say that so you won't get discouraged with yourself if this is a challenge for you, identifying people and figuring out how to get started with them. The second broad observation I want to make is there is no silver bullet to slay this problem, or magic bullet. Which is it, silver or magic? Silver bullet is a beer, right? I don't want to miss that illustration.
The silver bullets kill werewolves.
Yeah.
Whichever one works for you, there isn't a quick, easy solution for this. When I was a freshman at Florida College, Brent Hunter persuaded me to sit in his Evangelism 101 class, and I was eager to sit at his feet because the church where he was preaching was baptizing lots of people, and I thought, they know the secret, and they can tell me how to do this so it won't be so stinking hard, right? Sat in that class for 3 months, and guess what I found out?
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. That's exactly right. There is no secret. This is hard. Now, I do think there are some people who have a knack, Wesley that I mentioned. Brent Hunter is a great guy like that just seemed to have a knack for being able to talk to people. We were at lunch one time and discussing this, and Brent said, oh, it's not hard to talk to people at all. And the waitress came over, and he stood up and said, you've just been waiting on our table, and you've just had such a kind spirit. I'm just sure you must be a Christian, And these guys preach in the area. They'd love to have a Bible study with you. Would you agree to that? And I sat there and thought, I don't know if I could do that. That was awkward witnessing, much less trying to do that.
What'd she say?
She said yes and never returned our calls. Hey, but it's what Paul said. He asked, right? And after that, it was in her hands. Yes, sir.
I think Brent's an example of where you can repeat things. So when he was in California, he baptized a lot of people, but he found out he was just wearing himself out doing it. When he moved to Washington, he didn't spend much time talking to non-Christians. He spent his time teaching people.
Yeah.
And he has duplicated what he's doing highly successfully.
Yeah. Baptizes lots of people, lots and lots of people. And I don't know that we have to become that guy, because I'm not Brent, and frankly, I wouldn't be a very good version of him.
Well, it's more of just the material. It's not personality. It's passing on really. It's the people in his congregation, every one of them's different in how they
Exactly.
approach
But
it.
it is personality.
Well, see, that's why I say some people have a
Honestly,
knack.
He probably does that in every aspect of his life, not just his
Yes.
Christian life.
So that's why I say you've got to nuance this some to fit you and who you are.
Well, and in fact, in some ways, it's a solace, the passage you read, and then another way, it makes it even worse. You're sitting there going, here's Paul, who was at the feet of Gamaliel for years and years and years, who had the Holy Spirit, and yet he's wanting other people to pray for him, not just that he'll have opportunity, but that he'll have the right words to say, because he's afraid he won't. He had every advantage in the world, and yet he's worried that he's going to say the wrong things. Now,
eloquent in speech either.
well, he claimed that he wasn't eloquent.
Yeah.
In his speech. I don't believe that, but I think that was a rhetorical thing on his part.
But nonetheless, a struggle.
Right, it was a struggle for him, so I don't know if that makes me feel better that here's somebody who was good at it. It was a struggle for him, so maybe I shouldn't feel bad when it's a struggle for me. Or I sit there and go, I'm an introvert. I'm I'm not eloquent. I mean, I don't know how to broach the subject. I feel awkward broaching it just out of the blue. I don't get those moments where, oh, you want some water? Well, I have
Living water.
It doesn't work for me.
So I want to say two things about that, and I want to be clear on this. I don't think we should try to be somebody else, but at the same time, that doesn't mean we can't learn from someone else, and in a way that fits who we are and our personality, be just as passionate and diligent with the tools and resources God's given us to reach the lost. So I don't know Paul, but I'm guessing Paul's conversation wasn't exactly like Brent's. I'm guessing your conversation on the golf course wasn't exactly like Brent's in the restaurant, because you're two different people, two different personalities.
I'm sure it wasn't.
So same work, but executed in a different way by different people. I think that's the point. So the point is, I don't want you to get discouraged if you struggle with this. I think everyone does. And the second thing I want to say is struggle with it because it is hard. Listen, I'm not going to give you anything in this class that is going to be the simple, easy solution. If I would have found out a long time ago, listen, I'd have written a book. I don't think there's a simple, easy solution. I think everything we talk about begins to nudge us out of our comfort zones and to do things we're uncomfortable with. Yes?
So could we take Jill's observation and kind of reverse engineer it and say that Wesley did that with every aspect of his life? So how do we, in every aspect of our life, talk to people about things? Can we take that same approach? That is us.
Yes, because I don't talk to people. So. I'm off the hook.
You needed a Facebook ad.
And I don't use Facebook.
We're going to work on John right now, man. Here we go. So I want to cover those two categories, and clearly this is kind of touching a nerve, so I'm not going to rush. We can do some of this in the next class too. I want to address the question of finding people around us, since that is part of this struggle, and then as a second question, talk a little bit about grabbing that moment and turning the conversation. So 4 things about finding people. Number 1, I think the real key to this is learning to go out every day with a sense of mission. I think that awareness is far more of a problem than we actually realize. I wonder if we don't have far more opportunities in our lives that we don't see because we're just not operating at that level. What are you thinking about when you go through your day?
Well, I hope nobody talks to me.
What you have to get done.
I'm thinking about what I have to get done today. I am consumed with schedule. I expected Hunter to say amen at this point. I don't know why he didn't. But yes, it's all about the to-do list and getting it finished. And so we get so consumed with today that we don't even operate up here on this eternal level. And we interact with people and all we see them as are people that intersect our schedule in some way. This is the waiter at the restaurant who's bringing my food today. This is the clerk that's checking me out at the grocery store. This is the lady at the driver's license place who's not moving nearly fast enough to get this line down, right? Those kind of things. That's how we operate and see people. We don't see people like the Lord saw people. When he looked at people, what did he see? Yeah, souls. These are my children that I need to reach. And so I think there is a rewiring that needs to take place where we go out into our circle, and that's what our focus is. This sort of background program running in our brain all the time that looks at every single person and sees the most important thing about them. They're a soul that might need the gospel, that probably needs the gospel. And two, this interaction might potentially have a door in it. I think we need to see that every day, all the time, with everybody. Think about John 4, right? What happened in John 4? Where did Jesus meet this disreputable woman? Yeah, it wasn't at a church service. They weren't at a religious gathering. It wasn't a festival. He was sitting there waiting for friends. She came out to draw water. Nobody was thinking about, well, I shouldn't say that because he may well have known what was getting ready to go on. She wasn't thinking this was going to be an evangelistic moment, but a door opened and the Lord took advantage of it. And so I think until every day we process it in that way, I think the opportunities get away from us. Does that make sense? Do y'all buy that?
I think Jesus pushed that door open too.
Well, yes, yeah, I think that's right. But you got to see it before you can do anything with it. So to help us with that, let me add secondly, that I think we can find the people if we'll get in the habit of praying about it every day. So go to Ephesians for a minute. Do y'all remember this section at the end of Ephesians where Paul is urging us to armor up and get ready for battle, right? At the end of that segment, in verse 18, he says to do all of this, to armor up with all prayer and petition, pray at all times in the Spirit, and with this in view, be on the alert with all perseverance and petition for all the saints, and pray on my behalf that utterance may be given to me in the opening of my mouth to make known with boldness the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains, that in proclaiming it I may speak boldly as I ought to speak. So notice he urges us to pray, but then that's linked in 19 and 20 to speaking, right? And in this case, what is he asking for? Specifically. Colossians, it was doors.
Boldly to proclaim the mystery of the gospel.
Yeah, so what's he want? Courage and words. Yeah. Chapter 6, 18 through 20. So one of the great things about making this the object of prayers is it enlists the power of God to help us. And let me be clear. God answers this prayer. If you pray for doors and boldness and words, God grants that. That's a prayer he wants to answer. We talk about praying toward the will of God. This is the will of God. He wants this. And so if we prayed that, God would do it. We enlist his power to help us. But do you see another benefit of praying about it every day? Oh man, it just contributes to awareness dramatically. So before coffee, make me sensitive to the opportunities around me today. And I mean just that much. Make me sensitive to the opportunities. Or more to my preference, I pray for God to open doors and then add the name. Do you have somebody you want to reach? So every day, bring their name and lay it before God. I want to reach Cade. Cade is actually one of the names on my list. Open a door for me to talk to Cade. Give me the right words to speak to them. It's the Colossians 4 prayer, right? So I think if we did those two things, had that sense of mission and complemented that and stirred that by praying about it every day, if nothing else, I think it would make us more aware of opportunities that I think may be laying around that we don't see. Do y'all buy that? I was teaching this in a class when I started out up in Huntsville, and I made this exact point. And I urged the class to go out that week and look for opportunities that maybe you haven't seen before. And on Thursday of the next week, that was Sunday, on Thursday, Martha Tullis called me. She was one of our ladies, good lady, worked for a university up there. And she called me to ask me a question about something. And so I asked her, I said, so Martha, I challenged you in class to look for doors. Have you seen any doors this week? And she paused and she said, no, hadn't seen any. And I mean, I just had to laugh at her. She had called me because at work that day, some of her coworkers had been sitting around at lunch talking about abortion. And she'd called me because she wanted some scriptural help so she could go back and talk to them. So Martha's working an opportunity and doesn't realize that it's an opportunity. Do you see how we could miss it? Okay. Anyone want to add to that? Yeah.
In the passage you read from Ephesians, and I think this goes back to the sense of mission, because I don't think of it this way, and maybe I need to, but as part of the armor of God, we're supposed to put on as shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace. If I'm truly thinking about this as a gospel of peace, not a gospel of conflict, now I can argue conflict as well, but if I'm thinking of it as a gospel of peace, God wants to be reconciled to everyone, and he wants us to be reconciled to everyone. If I have that in mind as part of my sense of mission, will that change how I interact with people? Will that change what I bring up to people, as opposed to making it that conflict of you're wrong, I'm right, as opposed to we all want peace?
Probably some of that is rooted in what most of our studies looked like 30 years ago. Because when I studied with 30 people, when I studied with people 30 years ago, it was other religious people that I was trying to persuade that their understanding of Scripture needed adjusting. Kind way of saying I was trying to tell them they were wrong, right? That's what a lot of it was. I don't study with a lot of people like that today. And so there isn't a lot of this religious, is baptism necessary? Why don't you guys have a band? There isn't a lot of that going on. It's a lot of, yeah, God's a neat idea. I'm not sure I really believe that. And you know, I don't know about the Bible. The Bible said some stuff that's kind of sketchy to me. I'm not really sure that's from God. That's more and more what we're dealing with. So I think it's less conflict because it's not sort of this religious debate. And I do think it comes back to what you're saying, is helping people floundering in darkness to find peace. And maybe that would change our spirit about the mission. That's a good thought.
And the other thing I would say, and this goes to the sense of mission, I mean, 1 Corinthians 3:6 talks about Paul planted, Apollos watered, and then I could also bring up Barnabas, son of encouragement. Maybe my role isn't the role of, I mean, I think there are a lot of people who are very good at getting people in the church building.
Yes.
But then there's other people who are good at helping those people grow. And they're both necessary to get that person to heaven. Otherwise, it's like the sower. Yeah, you got them in the door, but they fell away. I mean, so maybe my mission is not to actually be the planter. Maybe mine is the watering, or maybe mine is the encouraging.
So let me just push back a little about that. And I would say I do believe that evangelism has a lot of facets, and you may be gifted. There are guys like Wesley who can just meet people like nobody I know. Way better at that than I am. And so maybe he has a larger work to do there that I or someone else might have. But the flip side of that is that he doesn't know the people in my circle. And so at some level, all of us have to do all of it at whatever level we can, because I know some people that none of the rest of y'all know. And if they're going to hear, I may be the one to have to start it. As feeble as my efforts might be, they will be my efforts to connect with them and help them find their way. Yeah.
I think you're right, that they have to have some, that Andrew, you or Peter, or whatever, both of them, right? Because situations like that, I think where we fall down a lot is there's no markets.
Well,
That's not my skill, right? I struggle with that.
Yeah.
And, I think that's a lot of why, we had this new conference class, well, nobody showed up, well, anybody go?
Yeah, well, so it's really important, I think, for us to identify where we are especially capable and concentrate there. Because do y'all buy that? That everybody has gifts, they're just not all the same. Even in terms of evangelism, there'll be part of this that you do better than others. But, for example, you might have to be the one to share the gospel, teach someone, because they're your friend and they'll only talk to you. So I think what we do is we fine-tune our gifts to the highest level of their ability. That's really true in lots of things. You may not be a preacher, guys, but if you show up, like a friend of mine did, at a church where there were 7 women and you, guess who's preaching? Right?
Wouldn't that also tie in with the Great Commission? And our ability at some level?
Yeah, well, all of this wraps up ultimately in the mission to go share the gospel. I think we all have a part to play in this. Yeah, let me say that. That's 2 ways to say it. We all have a part to play in it, and we will all at some level have to play every part. That makes sense about that? All right, let me give you a third thing to think about. And we're still trying to find people. In an effort to do that, don't overlook anybody, right? Don't look past anybody. I think there's a natural tendency to talk to people that you already know and have a relationship with. Is there a benefit to that?
Safe.
Why is it safe?
Because even if you're vulnerable on your terms.
Okay.
You're vulnerable to the degree that you're comfortable.
Yeah, the other benefit of that is they know you're not a nut. Maybe. That could change, I know. But I think it's helpful, especially talking about spiritual things, when people kind of know you and you kind of know them. In fact, I'll make some points later that I think there's an advantage when some kind of relationship exists. So it might be easy to default there. We just can't let ourselves only look to the people we know, because there's lots of people in our circle that we don't have close personal relationships, people that you and I are bumping into all the time, that there may be opportunities to help them start their journey. Great example of that. We have at least 4 police officers who watch things for us on Sunday. I'm embarrassed to admit that the first couple of years I was here, they were just the cops who watched the door. I'm grateful for their presence and that big, huge piece of metal they're wearing on their hip. That gives me a little peace of mind, right? But there were some people in this church that with the lady police officer who saw more and started talking to her. And for a while, she was interested and even came when she wasn't doing her work here, came and visited our service. And some were trying to get a study with her. I don't think that ever quite worked out, but you know what? They noticed her and they made an effort to reach out to her. So the point is, don't look past anybody. Don't look at people who are just close to you. In fact, maybe you've worked that crowd of people over the years. Maybe you've offered studies and extended invitation. I had a guy one time who says, "Yep, I've invited my coworker for 20 years to come to a gospel meeting. He's never come." I said, maybe you should invite somebody else, right? If I keep banging my head against the wall and I've tried and that's not working, I need to look beyond that. And even people that we might be tempted to write off. Do any of y'all do that? Look at people and say to yourself, nah, I don't be interested. Man, God's been trying to get that out of me for a long, long time. I am bad about that. I make assumptions about who will listen and who will not listen. And I keep running into these people that in my mind I would write off, and yet they hear the gospel and respond to it. So get out of that nasty habit of deciding for God who should get to hear it and who shouldn't. Don't overlook anyone. In fact, maybe that would be a good thing with that sense, to add to that sense of mission. I need to pay attention maybe to people that are there I haven't thought about. Yes?
So I was up at Lindale last weekend, and they've got a large group of men that came out of the prison system, went through halfway houses, and they've all been baptized. And I look across the aisle, and there's probably only 2 of them I would have even approached. Right? I mean, tattoos, earrings, piercings everywhere. But somebody saw the soul there, and they've been there a while.
Yep. And it isn't just people like that. Sometimes it's the guy at work that's been divorced 3 times. And so what do we say? Yeah,
Say,
yeah.
oh, you're like that lady in John.
We should. Look who Jesus talked to in John. But we say they're probably unscriptural and they'll never change their situation. And and we're just wrong about that. We had a guy back in Beaumont who had married and divorced and remarried and then learned the gospel. Well, he'll never respond, right? Sure he did. He responded and put away this woman that he had no right to be with and lived a single life for years and years, decades that I knew him, because he had no right to remarry. Imagine if someone had said, yeah, he's not going to be interested. He would never take that dramatic step. All right? So what are we saying? Don't overlook anyone. And then let me just add to that list, especially don't ignore the obvious opportunities that we have. So some of us have been praying for God, I think we talked about this, for God to bring people to Kleinwood. Just bring people from this area. Whoever they are that need you, just bring them. And have y'all noticed what's happening?
All the visitors cards.
Oh. Oh my goodness, people are just showing up. Jerron, who was baptized, several weeks back, you know how Jerron got here? His mama was needling him about going back to church, and he got online, he Googled churches in Spring. My favorite one is the guy who thought this was the Mormon church and accidentally came here. So I got a Bible study. I got a Bible study with him. Listen, it is a big deal to get up on a Sunday morning and to go to some weird place that you haven't ever been before. So when a visitor shows up, think about the iceberg principle. There's that little bit that sticks up. There's all this stuff underneath it. When someone is willing to get up early on a Sunday and drives to a place they've never been before and go sit in a building with a bunch of strangers where they may have no idea what we do and what this service is going to be like, think about what must have brought them. What must be underneath the surface that we may not see yet that drove them to do all of that? And so, honestly, guys, the people I rub shoulders with all day long, they're all saved. I mean, Hunter's not really a good door for me. He always knows. I'm pretty sure he knows the gospel. Even when his wife comes and visits, I'm pretty sure Jade's good with the Lord too. The people I find opportunities with are mostly the guests that come here. Lots and lots of opportunity. Don't look past the fact that when a visitor comes, they need to be welcomed, and we need to figure out what's underneath the surface that I haven't seen. And we're going to devote a class to this before I get done, just because it's such a big deal. Churches are terrible at this. When I bring this up, I get bombarded with horror stories about people going to places, and here's their reaction. I went in, I felt like I was intruding on a private gathering where I wasn't welcome. So, man, think about these people who've done all this to come here and how important it is that we grab that open door and take advantage of that. All right, we got more to work on along this line next week, but thank you for your help tonight.